They finally hybridized the Forester, and I'm actually pretty excited about it because this is the best Forester I think they've ever built. Welcome to Out Motorsports, the channel for cars as you are. My name is Jake, and yes, I am indeed excited about a hybrid compact crossover because this is different setup-wise than many other hybrid crossovers of this size or a little bit bigger or smaller, and I think it retains a lot of Subaru-ness, which is what matters because Subaru has set themselves apart for so long in the driving experience in certain ways, and how do you improve on fuel economy and bring drivetrains into the modern world and keep things feeling Subaru-y? And I think they've done it here. So let's just get right into what this car is from a drivetrain perspective. So what do we have going on under the hood? Well, we're going to still have a 2.5 liter boxer 4-cylinder as the basis of this whole hybrid system. So it's still Subaru-ish, although this 2.5 liter is modified to run on the Atkinson cycle as you do with a hybrid, but it's generally the same motor as you're gonna get if you get the non-hybrid model. Of course, seeing the orange cabling indicates this one is indeed a hybrid. Now, the big deal is that Subaru has changed where they've mounted the hybrid motor and how this whole system works compared to something like a Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. So with a Toyota RAV4, for example, if you have all-wheel drive, you're going to have a hybrid system up front running the front wheels, and it is disconnected from the back wheels. There is a separate electric motor on the back axle, and when you need to use the rear wheels for slippery situations to spin those back tires, that rear electric motor gets called into play, and it works, but sometimes it can be a little out of sync. It can just feel a little something, and you have to wait for it to come on. It's not a slow process by any means, but it's just not going to be what Subaru wants for their symmetrical all-wheel drive. So by them locating the electric motor inside the bell housing of the transmission, it means that it's ahead of the all-wheel drive system, and it works with all four wheels. It is a fully mechanical all-wheel drive system still. Now, that is going to come at the expense of fuel economy because they cannot turn off the back axle. It's going to always be running, but what that means is this will still drive and handle and do all the off-roady stuff like a gas-powered Forester has been able to do. So we'll talk a little bit more about that while I start driving it, but that is the big difference here. Now, overall system horsepower is not going to be super high. It's about 14 horsepower more than the outgoing model, the non-hybrid model. It's 194 horsepower, which, you know, on paper is not especially fast, and you do gain some weight by adding the hybrid system. It's just shy of 300 pounds extra for overall weight here, but the torque is where this is all going to feel a little different. Now, Subaru is not publishing a total torque output, but the electric motor alone outputs 199 pound-feet plus 160-something pound-feet from the gas motor. So in theory, you've got the electric motor that can A, get you moving from a stop with that 199, and then fill in any gaps as you need. The 0 to 60 time on this is rated around 8.6 seconds from Subaru, and that's about what the gas-powered one runs, but you're gonna have higher fuel economy. So, of course, the downside of running all four wheels all the time is that maybe not as high a fuel economy as they could get, but this is rated for 35 miles a gallon combined city and highway, whereas the regular one is rated for 27 to 28. So that is a pretty significant boost percentage-wise over the gas model. And we'll talk about pricing here while I start driving, but it's not going to take that long to make up that difference if you drive a lot. And like I said, the driving experience of this, I think, is better than any Forester they've had before. Okay, so driving the Forester Hybrid, so leaving a stoplight here, this is mostly on electric mode, and then it pretty seamlessly transitions into the gas hybrid operation. Now, one of the single best things about this drivetrain is that you ditch the regular Subaru CVT. It is still a CVT, it's just not the Lineartronic CVT that Subaru has been known for, which is that belt and pulley setup that a lot of gas-only CVTs are going to be. When you've got a hybrid system, you end up with the planetary gear set arrangement, which is all mechanical. There's no belt, so it feels a lot less rubber bandy, it feels a lot less elastic, much more direct, and it actually works pretty well. Now, as we go through these couple of corners here, this actually feels relatively athletic. You don't feel the weight so much. You only do, at least I only do, when you feel the suspension compress. Through the corners, yes, it's a little heavier than a regular Forester, but it's not so much that, you know, you feel a significant difference. Now, as we get into some traffic and I pull out to accelerate, putting your foot in it, this is where you notice, oh, it's not that quick, and you notice that CVT-ness. That's just how hybrids operate, right? And it's fine. It's actually not that loud. Of course, a CVT is just gonna wind up to the maximum RPM and just go, but Subaru's added extra sound deadening for the hybrids, and it's not so bad. The overall acceleration experience is pretty good. 8.6 to 60 is not quick. It's not dangerously slow. You have to be willing to put your foot in it. Now, around town, it's not going to be problematic at all. It feels pretty good, and that extra torque from the electric motor, like I mentioned earlier, really feels pretty nice right off the line. I don't wish this had a turbo or anything. It feels totally fine, to be honest. Now, most times when you get the electric motor transitioning over to that hybrid operation, it feels pretty smooth, pretty seamless, which is what you want. In traffic, sometimes it can be a little grumpy, a little vibration-y, but really they've done a pretty nice job isolating the whole thing. And then when you have to slow the whole thing down, of course, you've got regenerative braking. That's how you dump power back into the battery. Pretty typical hybrid operation. Subaru has done a really, really good job with the brake pedal. It is hard to blend braking between the regenerative braking and then the actual friction brakes. And they've done a really good job of it. It feels good. Brake pedal is predictable. It gives you a nice bite even when you're just on regen, and then it transitions into the regular brakes, and it feels pretty good there too. Of course, this is not a sports car in the slightest, not a big deal, but it generally feels quite nice. So, you know, the driving experience of this car is really pretty good for what it is. It's not a sports car, right? But it generally, I like it. And that's paired to good visibility, typical Forester hallmark. You've got really big, tall windows. You've got these nice little quarter windows here ahead of your mirrors, give you some extra visibility, and a good seating position. The dash is still nice and low. They added a fully digital gauge cluster here, which they replaced the TAC with a Charge Eco Power gauge, which is a little bit useless, but kind of nice to see. And then, you know, you can have maps displayed here. You can do all sorts of stuff, and it's all fine and good. And then you've got your typical now Starlink screen. That's the 11.6 inches here with climate and volume on the sides as physical controls. This I don't like. It's slow to respond. It's slow to start up, but once it's going, it works just fine. So, you know, all right. The climate controls do persist down here for a couple extra features, heated seats, that sort of thing. You can call up your climate menu if you need to, but you see it's just kind of slow. It is what it is. Other systems are better. This is fine. Also, while we're stopped here talking about going, Subaru does have their latest version of EyeSight, their driver assistance software, and that's going to include lane centering, lane keep, radar cruise control, all that good stuff. It works much better than it did in past model years. So whatever they've done to update the software, it's really much better. I did about 250 miles of highway driving in the last few days, and it very nice with EyeSight in particular, both in traffic and at more free-flowing highway speeds. So that has been pretty nice. And then speaking of that 250-mile trip, it was largely highways with some in-town driving, with some stop and go. And, you know, I wasn't driving for maximum economy. I was just driving the car like I would drive anything else on a trip like that. And the car got 34 miles a gallon. Bang on with what Subaru says it should. And I just think that is pretty impressive. And I mentioned price earlier. It's about a $2,000 or $3,000 price delta between this trim as a gas-only model and this trim as a hybrid. And they offer this across a couple trims. You can get it on a Sport, you can get it on the Limited here, and then Touring is the top trim. I think it's just on those three. But you're gonna make the money back in a few years to where it starts becoming a net positive for what you spent. And this is by far the better driving experience, largely because you get the different CVT. You get that planetary gear CVT versus the belt and pulley system. And then the hybrid with the extra torque and teeny bit extra power is the overall better experience. On top of that, it's a little bit quieter versus the regular one, and there's really no downsides. You know, cars like this are not enthusiast cars in a typical sense. None of them are exciting. They're all kind of appliances, and why not make them better on fuel? And then with the electric motor where it is, you retain typical expected Subaru all-wheel drive characteristics with the symmetrical all-wheel drive. You know, I'm not saying the e-axle stuff is bad, it's just gonna be a different experience. And if you're looking to do Subaru things but get better fuel economy, you want it to still be a capable system. And this, retaining the exact same hardware, more or less, with an electric motor, there's kind of no downside. Whereas the e-axle stuff could be maybe a little worse. So I really see it as kind of a win-win here. And, you know, otherwise it's just a Forester. They kind of kept the formula the same. You know, styling is what it is. I don't especially love it, but if you do, that's fantastic. But, you know, styling's subjective. Inside, it's quite nice, a little austere, typical Subaru. I wish this one didn't have all black interior, but whatever. But in general, it's a nice package. And I think, you know, for a lot of people who are looking at one of these, this is the best one you can get because they took away a couple of my gripes, namely the transmission, how it operated. They added more torque, which is great. This doesn't really need to be any faster. They could do an XT again and, you know, add a turbo or something, but they don't have to. This is a really well done package, I think. Tons of space, typical Subaru affability, approachability, all that good stuff. Feels a little different from something like a RAV4 or CRV, and it gets better fuel economy. Win-win. Real world, 30 plus miles a gallon. Love it. So in any case, those are my thoughts on the 2025 Subaru Forester Hybrid. Thank you as always for coming along. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And stay tuned for more. We've got plenty more reviews. We've got a whole online community. We'd love to be your new best friends. And head over to outmotorsports.com for some events and to join that membership program. Thank you so much. Stay safe, be well. See you for the next one.